Nicolae Ceausescu was born on January 26, 1918, in the small village of Fluency, Romania. Rising from humble beginnings, he would go on to become one of the most powerful and controversial figures in Eastern Europe during the Cold War era. A devoted communist official, Ceausescu climbed the ranks of the Romanian Communist Party through determination, political maneuvering, and a growing reputation for loyalty to the party's ideology. His journey to power was marked by his ability to align himself with key players in the political landscape, eventually securing the leadership of Romania in 1965. Once in power, Ceausescu quickly established a rigid authoritarian regime. While initially gaining international attention for resisting Soviet control and promoting a relatively independent foreign policy, his domestic rule became increasingly oppressive. Under his leadership, Romania experienced severe restrictions on freedoms, widespread surveillance, and an economy that was strained by his ambitious but ultimately disastrous policies, including massive debt repayment programs and forced urbanization. His cult of personality grew stronger over the years as propaganda glorified his image and portrayed him as the genius behind Romania's progress, even as the quality of life for ordinary citizens steadily declined. The situation in Romania became increasingly dire in the late 1980s as food shortages, power cuts, and rising dissatisfaction fueled public unrest. Ceausescu's inability to adapt or recognize the growing discontent led to a dramatic and swift downfall. In December 1989, during a series of mass protests that escalated into a full-scale revolution, Ceausescu and his wife Elena attempted to flee the country. They were captured, tried, and executed by firing squad on December 25, 1989 in the city of Targovist, bringing an end to more than 2 decades of harsh rule. His death marked one of the most dramatic and symbolic moments of the collapse of communism in Eastern Europe and left a lasting impact on the Romanian people and the world. In the early 1930s, Nicolae Ceausescu became involved with the Romanian Communist Youth Movement, a bold move at a time when such affiliations were dangerous and often met with severe punishment. His unwavering commitment to communist ideals led to multiple arrests, with Ceausescu being imprisoned in 1936 and again in 1940 for his party activities. Despite these hardships, his dedication never wavered. In 1939, he married Elena Petrescu, a fellow communist activist, who would later become a powerful and controversial figure in her own right. This partnership would go on to shape not only their personal lives, but also the political trajectory of Romania. While serving time in prison, Ceausescu crossed paths with Gheorghe Dej, a key figure in Romania's communist movement. The relationship that developed between the two would prove pivotal for Ceausescu's future. George Dej took Ceausescu under his wing, mentoring him and setting the stage for his rapid rise within the party ranks. This connection would eventually secure Ceausescu a powerful place in Romania's communist elite. In August 1944, shortly before the Soviet occupation of Romania, Ceausescu managed to escape from prison just as the political tides were beginning to shift in favor of communist forces. Following his escape, Ceausescu wasted no time in returning to political work. He became the Secretary of the Union of Communist Youth from 1944 to 1945, a position that placed him at the heart of Romania's political transformation. After the Communists fully seized power in 1947, Ceausescu's influence grew quickly. He was appointed head of the Ministry of Agriculture from 1948 to 1950, and then served as Deputy Minister of the Armed Forces between 1950 and 1954, achieving the military rank of Major General. His close association with George Dej continued to pay off as Ceausescu steadily rose through the party's leadership structure. He eventually secured the second highest position in the Communist Party, occupying major roles within both the Politburo and the Secretariat. This ascent set the stage for his eventual takeover as Romania's leader, one of the most defining chapters in the country's modern history. After the death of Gheorghe Dej, in March 1965, Nicolae Ceausescu rose to the pinnacle of political power in Romania. He succeeded his former mentor as the leader of the Romanian Communist Party, taking the position of First Secretary, which would later be renamed General Secretary in July of that same year. His rise did not stop there. In December 1967, he assumed the role of president of the State Council effectively, making him the head of state. Ceausescu now held both the highest party and government positions, setting the stage for a new era in Romanian politics. At the beginning of his rule, Ceausescu quickly gained widespread popularity. He charted a bold and nationalistic course that set Romania apart from the rest of the Eastern Bloc. His stance was seen as courageous and defiant, especially in a time when most communist nations remained tightly aligned with Soviet interests. One of the most significant moves that gained him international attention was his decision to reduce Romania's participation in the Warsaw Pact military alliance during the 1960s. Ceausescu further distanced Romania from Moscow by publicly condemning the 1968 invasion of Czechoslovakia by Warsaw Pact forces, an act that shocked the communist world and earned him praise both at home and abroad. His defiance of Soviet power did not stop there. In 1979, Ceausescu once again made headlines by criticizing the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan. These bold statements and policies reinforced his image as a strong nationalist leader willing to challenge the most dominant power in the communist bloc. His independent streak earned Romania a unique place in global politics and even brought warmer relations with the West for a time. In 1974, Ceausescu's authority was further solidified when he was elected to the newly created post of President of Romania, marking yet another milestone in his consolidation of power. With full control of the state party and military, Ceausescu appeared unstoppable, ushering in a period that would eventually turn from admiration to deep unrest. While Nicolae Ceausescu gained praise for his independent stance in foreign affairs, his domestic policies told a very different story. At home, he tightened his grip on the Romanian people through an increasingly rigid adherence to communist orthodoxy. Centralized administration became the core of his rule, and his infamous secret police enforced strict controls over every aspect of public life. Free speech and a free press were virtually non-existent, and no form of internal dissent or opposition was tolerated. The fear of surveillance and punishment became a daily reality for Romanian citizens as Ceausescu's regime became one of the most repressive in the Eastern Bloc. One of his most notorious domestic policies came in 1966 when he issued Decree 770. This drastic measure was designed to increase Romania's population by effectively outlawing both contraception and abortion. The state took extreme steps to monitor women of childbearing age, with doctors regularly checking to ensure that women were not doing anything to prevent pregnancy. The result was a humanitarian crisis. As women turned to unsafe illegal methods to end pregnancies, maternal mortality rates soared, placing immense suffering on countless families. Rather than creating a population boom that would strengthen the country, this policy only deepened the struggles of everyday Romanians, especially women. As the 1970s progressed, Ceausescu's government racked up a large foreign debt, fueled by ambitious and poorly managed industrial ventures. By 1982, he made a fateful decision. Determined to pay off the debt at any cost, he ordered the export of a vast portion of the nation's agricultural and industrial output. This led to severe shortages of food, fuel, energy, medicine, and other essential goods. The standard of living plummeted across the country, and daily life became a struggle for survival. What had once been minor discontent quickly turned into widespread unrest as the people grew weary of the sacrifices being demanded in the name of economic independence. Adding to the sense of national frustration was Ceausescu's growing cult of personality. He surrounded himself with glorifying propaganda portraying himself as the infallible father of the nation. He appointed his wife Elena to prominent government roles and handed out powerful positions to many members of his extended family. These moves not only bred corruption, but also alienated the public further. Among his most outlandish schemes was a plan to bulldoze thousands of villages across Romania, forcing their inhabitants into state-planned agritechnical centers. This vision was part of a larger attempt to remake Romanian society, but it destroyed communities and cultural heritage in the process. What began as a bold era of independence had now become a dark period of control, suffering, and disillusionment. The final days of Nicolae Ceausescu's regime unfolded with breathtaking speed and intensity. On December 17, 1989, the simmering discontent that had gripped Romania for years exploded into open revolt. In the city of Timișoara, Ceausescu ordered his security forces to fire on anti-government demonstrators in a brutal attempt to silence the growing unrest. But instead of restoring order, the violence sparked a nationwide uprising. The protests quickly spread, gaining strength and momentum as more and more Romanians rose up against the oppressive regime. What began as isolated demonstrations soon transformed into a full-scale revolution. By December 22nd, the resistance had reached the heart of the capital, Bucharest. In a stunning and decisive moment, the Romanian army turned against Ceausescu and sided with the demonstrators. The power dynamic shifted instantly, and the regime began to unravel. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Ceausescu and his wife Elena fled the capital in a desperate attempt to escape. They boarded a helicopter and tried to evade capture, but their efforts were in vain. Romanian armed forces apprehended the couple soon after and took them into custody, bringing them to the town of Targovist. What followed was one of the most dramatic endings to a dictatorship in modern history. On December 25th, Christmas Day, Ceausescu and his wife were hastily tried by a special military tribunal. The charges were grave and included mass murder and other serious crimes against the Romanian people. The trial was swift, lasting only a few hours. Upon being convicted, the couple was immediately executed by firing squad. The deaths of Nicolae and Elena Ceausescu marked the definitive end of decades of authoritarian rule. They were later buried in Bucharest, but the legacy of their regime left deep scars on the nation. The fall of Ceausescu closed one of the darkest chapters in Romania's history and opened the door to a new and uncertain future.